The sound echoed across the parking lot like a gunshot. Natasha heard it before she understood what it was. She was walking toward her car, her hand holding her daughter Sophie's, both of them still buzzing with excitement from the SpellingBee victory. Sophie had just won the district finals. 7 years old, and she had beaten 23 other kids, including her cousin Brittany, to take first place. The trophy was tucked under Natasha's other arm, the gold plastic catching the late afternoon sun. Then came that sound. Sure. Violent. Wrong. Natasha turned just in time to see her sister Monique's hand pulling back from Sophie's face. Her daughter stumbled backward, hand flying to her reddening cheek, eyes wide with shock and pain. The trophy slipped from Natasha's grip and clattered to the pavement. You cheated. Monique screamed, her face twisted with rage. You stole this from Brittany? She's the gifted one, not you. Time seemed to stop. Parents who had been loading their own children into cars froze. Someone gasped. Natasha's whole body went cold, then hot, then cold again. Her sister. Her own sister had just struck her child. Mommy? Sophie's voice was small, trembling. A red handprint was already forming on her brown cheek, fingers clearly visible. Tears spilled down her face, but she wasn't crying yet. She was too shocked. Natasha moved then, finally, her body unlocking. She pulled Sophie behind her, putting herself between her daughter and her sister. What did you just do? Her voice came out strangled, barely above a whisper. She cheated. Monique repeated, jabbing a finger towards Sophie. Brittany studied for months. She's in the gifted program at her school. Some little nobody doesn't just win against my daughter. She's 7 years old. Natasha's voice rose, shaking with fury and disbelief. You just hit a 7-year-old child. My child. Brittany stood beside her mother, crying now too, clutching her second-place ribbon. She looked confused and scared. Other parents were pulling out their phones. Someone was recording. A woman Natasha recognized from the SpellingBee approached quickly. I saw everything, the woman said quietly to Natasha. I'm calling the police. Don't you dare, Monique snarled. This is family business. You assaulted a child, the woman said firmly. In front of 50 witnesses. Natasha's hands were shaking as she knelt down to Sophie's level. Her daughter's cheek was swelling now, the handprint vivid against her skin. Sophie was crying in earnest now, big gulping sobs that broke Natasha's heart into pieces. Baby, look at me, Natasha whispered, cupping Sophie's face gently on the uninjured side. You're okay. You're safe. Mommy's here. Why did Aunt Monique hit me? Sophie asked between sobs. I didn't cheat, Mommy. I studied my words every night like you taught me. I know, baby. I know you did. Natasha pulled her daughter close, feeling Sophie's small body shake against her. Over Sophie's shoulder, she looked at her sister. Really looked at her. Monique's face was flushed, her eyes wild. This wasn't just anger about a spelling bee. This was something else. Something uglier. Jealousy. Resentment. How long had it been building? You're going to regret this, Natasha said quietly, her voice steady now despite the rage flowing through her veins. Are you threatening me? Monique laughed, but it sounded forced. You've always been the perfect one, haven't you? Perfect marriage, perfect house, perfect child. Well, Brittany is gifted. The school says so. She has a certificate. She shouldn't lose to some regular kid. Sophie is not some regular kid, Natasha said, standing now with Sophie held against her hip. She's your niece. And you just committed assault on a minor in front of dozens of witnesses. Police sirens wailed in the distance, getting closer. Monique's eyes widened. She grabbed Brittany's hand and started backing toward her car. This isn't over, Monique hissed. Mom and Dad will hear about this. About how you turned on family. Let them hear about how you hit my child, Natasha shot back. Let everyone hear about it. 2 police cars pulled into the parking lot. The woman who had called them approached the officers immediately, pointing at Monique. Other parents gathered around, all of them talking at once, all of them pointing at Monique, at Sophie's injured face. The next 2 hours were a blur. Statements given. Photographs taken of Sophie's cheek. Natasha sat in the back of an ambulance while a paramedic examined Sophie, documenting the injury. The paramedic was gentle but thorough, noting the clear handprint, the swelling, the way Sophie flinched when anyone reached toward her face. You'll want to take her to the hospital, the paramedic said quietly to Natasha. Get everything documented properly. This kind of injury, especially on a child. He didn't finish the sentence, but Natasha understood. Monique was questioned by police. Natasha watched from a distance as her sister argued, gestured wildly, pointed at Sophie and at Natasha. Brittany sat in Monique's car, face pressed against the window, still crying. Natasha felt a pang of sympathy for her niece. This wasn't Brittany's fault. She was just a child too, caught in her mother's jealousy and rage. When Natasha finally drove to the hospital with Sophie, the trophy sat in the back seat, forgotten. Sophie was quiet now, exhausted from crying, her cheek dark with bruising. Natasha gripped the steering wheel so hard her knuckles turned pale. Her phone buzzed constantly. Text from her parents. From other family members. Everyone had heard already. Her mother's message made her stomach turn. Monique says there was an accident at the spelling bee. What happened? Why are police involved? Please tell me you're not making trouble. Making trouble. As if Natasha was the problem. As if her sister hadn't just assaulted her child. She didn't respond to any of the messages. She focused on driving, on getting Sophie to the emergency room, on making sure her daughter was okay. Everything else could wait. At the hospital, a doctor examined Sophie's face, took more photographs, filled out forms. Child Protective Services was notified as a matter of protocol for any assault on a minor. A social worker came to speak with both Natasha and Sophie. It was nearly midnight when they finally arrived home. Gerald's car was in the driveway, which surprised Natasha. He had texted earlier that he was working late at the office. Again. He was always working late these days. She carried a sleeping Sophie into the house, the weight of her daughter both familiar and precious. Gerald emerged from the living room, loosening his tie. "Where have you been?" he asked, his tone annoyed. "I've been calling for hours." Natasha stared at him. "Sophie won the spelling bee," she said flatly. Then Monique slapped her in the face in the parking lot. "We've been at the hospital." Gerald blinked, processing this. "What?" "Your daughter has been assaulted by my sister. We've spent hours with police and doctors, and you didn't even know we were gone." "I was at the office," Gerald said defensively. "You know the Peterson account is demanding." Natasha carried Sophie past him toward her bedroom. "I know," she said, her voice hollow. "You're always at the office these days." She laid Sophie gently in bed, careful not to jostle her injured face. Her daughter mumbled something in her sleep, curling around her favorite stuffed elephant. Natasha sat on the edge of the bed, watching Sophie's chest rise and fall, the bruise on her cheek dark and angry even in the dim nightlight. How had everything fallen apart so quickly? This morning life had seemed almost normal. Busy, strained with Gerald's long hours and emotional distance, but normal. Tonight, her sister had struck her child, and her husband hadn't even noticed they were gone for 6 hours. Something inside Natasha shifted then. A decision made without fully conscious thought. She had spent years being the peacemaker, the understanding sister, the patient wife, the one who kept everything smooth and everyone happy. But her daughter's bruised face told a different story. It told her that being soft and accommodating hadn't protected the people she loved. It had only made her family think they could hurt her child without consequences. That ended tonight. Natasha kissed Sophie's forehead gently and went to face whatever came next. The emergency room had given Natasha printed instructions for monitoring Sophie overnight. Watch for signs of concussion, apply ice for swelling, give children's pain medication as needed. She read the papers 3 times sitting in Sophie's bedroom, the words blurring as exhaustion and adrenaline fought each other in her system. Through the wall, she could hear Gerald on the phone in their bedroom. His voice was low but animated. Still dealing with the Peterson account at midnight. Of course he was. Natasha's phone buzzed again. Another text from her mother. "Monique is very upset. She says she barely touched Sophie. Why would you involve police over a family disagreement?" Family disagreement. Natasha's hands clenched around the phone. Her 7-year-old daughter had a handprint bruised into her face, and her mother was calling it a disagreement. She typed back, "Look at the photo I sent. Look at Sophie's face. Then tell me that's barely touching her." The response came immediately. "Accidents happen when emotions run high. Monique feels terrible. She's your sister. We don't air family problems in public." Natasha's jaw tightened. There it was. The same message she'd heard her entire life. Family comes first. Don't make waves. Protect the family image. It didn't matter what Monique had done. It only mattered that Natasha was breaking the unspoken rule by involving outsiders. She put the phone face down on Sophie's nightstand and pulled the blanket higher over her sleeping daughter. Sophie's breathing was steady, her face relaxed despite the injury. It looked so small in her bed, surrounded by stuffed animals and SpellingBee word lists she'd practiced from. The door opened quietly. Gerald stood in the doorway, still in his work clothes, tie hanging loose around his neck. "Is she okay?" he asked softly. "The doctor said the swelling should go down in a few days. No concussion. Just bruising and trauma from being hit by her aunt in front of everyone she knows." Gerald winced. "I still can't believe Monique would do that." "Believe it? 50 people saw it happen. It's on video." He stepped into the room looking at Sophie with something like concern. It was more emotion than Natasha had seen from him in months. "What are you going to do?" "I'm going to press charges," Natasha said clearly. "I'm going to file a lawsuit. And I'm going to make sure Monique understands that you don't get to hurt my child without consequences." "Our child?" Gerald corrected automatically. Natasha looked at him. "When was the last time you helped her study her spelling words? When was the last time you went to one of her competitions? You didn't even know she had the district finals today." Gerald's face flushed. "I've been busy. The Peterson account is more important than your daughter's biggest achievement so far." "I know." Natasha stood, moving past him toward the door. "I need to get ice for her face. The doctor said to apply it every few hours." In the kitchen, she wrapped ice cubes in a clean towel, her movements mechanical. The house was too quiet. It had been too quiet for months now, she realized. Gerald was never home, and when he was locked in his office or on his phone. They barely spoke anymore except about logistics. Who would pick up Sophie? What bills needed paying? Whether they had milk? When had they stopped being a couple and become just roommates managing a household? Gerald followed her into the kitchen. "Maybe you should think about this," he said. "Suing Monique will tear the family apart." Monique tore the family apart when she hit Sophie. "She's your sister. Your only sister. And your parents are already upset. If you press charges, then they'll have to face what Monique did instead of pretending it didn't happen." Gerald leaned against the counter, studying her. "You're different tonight. My daughter was assaulted." "Yes, I'm different." "No, it's more than that. You're—" He seemed to search for the word. "Harder." Natasha met his eyes. "Maybe I needed to be harder a long time ago." Something flickered across Gerald's face. Guilt? Fear? Before Natasha could identify it, his phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out, glanced at the screen, and his expression changed. "I need to take this," he said, already moving toward the hallway. "It's almost 1 a.m. The Peterson account is international. Time zones." He was walking away, phone to his ear, voice dropping to that low, animated tone again. Natasha stood alone in the kitchen, holding the ice pack. Through the doorway, she could see Gerald pacing in the living room, his free hand gesturing as he talked. The conversation went on for minutes. 5, 10, 15. She walked closer, not meaning to eavesdrop, just wanting to ask him to keep his voice down so he didn't wake Sophie. That's when she heard it. "I know, baby, I know. I'll try to get away tomorrow." "Yes, I miss you too." Natasha froze. "Baby." He had called someone baby. In that soft, intimate voice she hadn't heard directed at her in over a year. Gerald turned and saw her standing there. The color drained from his face. He lowered the phone slowly. "Natasha." "Who is she?" Natasha asked. Her voice sounded calm. Strange. Like it was coming from someone else. "It's not what you think." "Oh. She." Gerald's mouth opened and closed. He looked at his phone, then back at Natasha. "I can explain." "I'm sure you can. But first tell me who she is." "Her name is Simone. We work together." "It's not, we haven't." "Don't lie to me." Natasha's voice was still eerily calm. "You just called her baby at 1 a.m. How long?" Gerald sat down heavily on the couch, head in his hands. "A year," he said finally. "A little over a year." A year. While Natasha had been managing their household, raising their daughter, making excuses for his long hours and emotional distance, he had been with someone else for a year. "Did you know?" The words came out before Natasha could stop them. "When Sophie was winning spelling bees and learning to ride her bike and losing her first tooth, were you there? Or were you with Simone?" "It wasn't supposed to happen. It just developed." Natasha laughed, a harsh sound that made Gerald flinch. "Things don't just develop. People make choices. You chose to cheat on your wife and abandon your daughter for a year. I didn't abandon Sophie. You've been here physically but nowhere else. She asked me last month why Daddy doesn't want to play with her anymore. What was I supposed to say?" Gerald looked up at her and she saw it then. He didn't look guilty. He looked caught. There was a difference. "I want a divorce," Natasha said. The words came out clear and certain. She hadn't known she was going to say them until they were already in the air between them. "Wait. Let's talk about this." Maybe we can. Can what? Go to counseling? Work it out? You've been having an affair for a year, Gerald. You called another woman baby while our daughter sleeps upstairs with a bruise on her face from being assaulted. There's nothing to work out. You're upset about Monique. You're not thinking clearly. I'm thinking more clearly than I have in months. You can sleep in the guest room tonight. Tomorrow you can find somewhere else to stay. Gerald stood abruptly. You can't just kick me out of my own house. Watch me. They stared at each other across the living room. Natasha saw him calculating, weighing his options. She had never stood up to him like this before. She had always been the accommodating one, the peacemaker, the one who smoothed things over. Not anymore. Fine, Gerald said finally. But this isn't over. We'll need to talk about custody, assets, everything. Get a lawyer. Have them contact mine. You don't even have a lawyer. I'll have one by Monday. Natasha turned and walked back to Sophie's room, closing the door firmly behind her. She sat in the rocking chair next to Sophie's bed, the ice pack in her lap, and let herself shake. In one day she had lost her sister and her marriage. Her daughter had been hurt. Her parents had chosen Monique's feelings over Sophie's safety. Everything familiar had crumbled away. But underneath the shock and pain, something else was building. Something hard and bright and determined. She had spent her whole life trying to keep everyone else happy. She had bent herself into shapes to fit her family's expectations, her husband's needs, her sister's jealousy. Look where it had gotten her. Sophie stirred in her sleep, reaching for the stuffed elephant. Natasha stood and gently pressed the ice pack to her daughter's bruised cheek. Sophie mumbled but didn't wake. I promise you, Natasha whispered to her sleeping child, no one will ever hurt you like this again. Not Aunt Monique. Not Daddy. Not anyone. I'm going to protect you now. Really protect you. Her phone buzzed with another text from her mother. She didn't look at it. Instead, she opened her browser and searched for family lawyers in the area. Then lawyers who specialized in civil assault cases. It was 2 a.m, but Natasha started making a list. Everything she would need. Copies of hospital records. Contact information for witnesses from the SpellingBee. Video footage if she could get it. Bank statements. Gerald's work schedule for the past year showing all those late nights. By the time the sun started to rise, Natasha had filled pages in her notebook. Plans. Evidence. Steps to take. She had also called her bank and opened a separate account in her own name. Gerald didn't know it yet, but half of their joint savings was now somewhere he couldn't access it. Sophie woke as sunlight crept through the window. Her hand went immediately to her cheek. Mommy? It hurts. I know, baby. I'm going to give you medicine to help. Natasha helped Sophie sit up, giving her pain medication and water. How do you feel? My face hurts, and I had bad dreams. What kind of dreams? About the SpellingBee. But in the dream, Aunt Monique kept hitting me and everyone just watched. They didn't help. Natasha pulled Sophie into a careful hug. That won't happen again. I'm making sure of it. Are you mad at Aunt Monique? Yes, baby. Very mad. Me too. Sophie's voice was small. I thought she loved me. I know. I thought so too. They sat together as morning light filled the room. Natasha could hear Gerald moving around the house, probably packing a bag for wherever he would go. She didn't care where, as long as it was away from here. Her phone rang. An unknown number. Natasha answered it. Mrs. Morrison? This is Detective Harris. We spoke yesterday at the SpellingBee. I wanted to follow up about the assault on your daughter. Natasha's grip on the phone tightened. Yes. We've completed our initial investigation. We have video footage from multiple witnesses, photographs of the injury, and sworn statements from parents who saw the incident. The prosecutor's office will be reviewing the case for criminal charges. They'll be in touch with you early next week. Thank you. I also wanted to let you know that you have the option to pursue a civil case as well. Given the circumstances and the clear evidence of assault, you'd have a strong case. I plan to, Natasha said firmly. After she hung up, Sophie looked up at her with wide eyes. What's going to happen to Aunt Monique? She's going to face consequences for what she did. Real consequences. Will she go to jail? I don't know yet, baby. But she'll have to answer for hurting you. Sophie considered this. Good, she said finally. She should. What she did was wrong. It was very wrong. Mommy? Are you and Daddy fighting? Natasha looked at her daughter's sweet face, bruised but brave. Sophie deserved honesty. Age-appropriate honesty, but truth nonetheless. Daddy and I are having serious problems. He might not be living here anymore. Because he's always at work? Partly that. And other reasons too. Sophie nodded solemnly. Brittany's dad doesn't live with them anymore. She says it's better now because they don't fight all the time. Out of the mouths of children, Natasha thought. Sometimes families change shape. But you'll always have mommy. That won't change. Even if everyone is mad at you? Even then. Sophie leaned against her mother's shoulder. I'm glad you're not going to pretend it didn't happen. Like Grandma wants. Natasha's throat tightened. Her 7-year-old shouldn't have to think about adults pretending and keeping secrets. But maybe that's what happened when you protected children from reality too much. They learned that truth was flexible, that family loyalty mattered more than justice. Not this time. Not anymore. No more pretending, Natasha promised. From now on we tell the truth. Even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. Monday morning, Natasha sat in a lawyer's office with a folder full of documentation. The law firm of Peterson and Associates occupied the 3rd floor of a downtown building, all glass walls and modern furniture. The receptionist had offered her coffee 3 times. Natasha hadn't touched it. Attorney Rebecca Thompson was a woman in her 50s with silver hair pulled back in a sleek bun and eyes that missed nothing. She reviewed the hospital photographs of Sophie's face, the police report, the witness statements, and the video footage someone had emailed to Natasha over the weekend. This is clear-cut assault on a minor, Rebecca said, setting the papers down. The video alone is damning. Your sister struck your daughter hard enough to leave visible bruising for days. In front of dozens of witnesses. At a children's spelling bee. My family wants me to drop it, Natasha said. They keep calling, texting, saying I'm tearing the family apart over nothing. Rebecca's expression hardened. Show me those messages. Natasha pulled out her phone and scrolled through the text from her parents, her aunt, 2 cousins. All variations on the same theme. Family doesn't sue family, Monique didn't mean it, Sophie is fine isn't she, think about what this will do to the family name. Keep all of these, Rebecca said. Every single message that pressures you to protect your sister instead of your daughter. This shows a pattern of enabling and prioritizing the wrong person. They think I'm overreacting. You're not. You're protecting your child from further harm. That's exactly what you should be doing. Rebecca leaned forward. Here's what I recommend. We file a civil suit against your sister for assault, battery, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. We seek damages for medical expenses, pain and suffering, and punitive damages to send a message that this behavior has consequences. Natasha nodded. And the criminal case? That's proceeding separately through the prosecutor's office. I've spoken with them. Given the evidence, they're moving forward with criminal charges. Your sister will be arraigned next week. The reality of it settled over Natasha. Her sister, who used to braid her hair when they were kids, who was her maid of honor at her wedding, who she had thought would always be her ally. That person was going to be criminally charged with assaulting Sophie. Good, Natasha said quietly. Rebecca studied her. You're sure about this? Once we file, there's no going back. Your family will escalate their pressure. I'm sure. My daughter deserves justice. And my sister needs to learn she can't hurt people because she's jealous. Jealous? Natasha explained about Brittany's gifted label, about how Monique had always competed over everything, about the years of subtle comments and comparisons. How Sophie winning the spelling bee had apparently been the final straw. Rebecca took notes, her pen moving quickly. This gives us context. Your sister has a pattern of unhealthy competition with you and your daughter. That strengthens our case for intentional infliction of emotional distress. They spent another hour going over details. Natasha signed forms, authorized Rebecca to request medical records, provided contact information for witnesses. When she finally left the law office, she felt both exhausted and energized. Something was in motion now. Something she controlled. Her next appointment was across town. Another law office, another folder of documentation. This time, the papers were different. Bank statements, mortgage documents, photographs of Gerald's car parked at an apartment complex on nights he claimed to be working late. Attorney James Rodriguez specialized in family law. He was younger than Rebecca, probably early 40s, with an expression that had seen every version of marital betrayal possible. How long have you been married? He asked, reviewing the documents Natasha had brought. 9 years. Together for 11. And the affair has been going on for approximately 1 year? That's what he said. But I don't know if I believe him. It might have been longer. James nodded. We can subpoena his phone records, work emails, credit card statements. Build a clear timeline. Do you know where the affair partner lives? Where they meet? Natasha pulled out the photographs she had taken over the weekend. Gerald thought she was being passive, accepting his explanation, planning to quietly negotiate. He didn't know she had followed him Sunday afternoon to the apartment complex where his car had been parked until midnight. I have the address, she said. James looked at the photographs, then at Natasha with new respect. You've been busy. I have a daughter to protect. I need to know what I'm dealing with. Smart. Too many people come to me with nothing but suspicions. You have evidence. He set the photos aside. Here's the situation. California is a no-fault divorce state, so the affair itself doesn't affect the divorce directly. However, it can influence custody decisions and asset division if we can show he was spending marital funds on the affair or neglecting parental duties. He hasn't been to one of Sophie's events in 6 months. Hasn't helped her with homework. Barely speaks to her. We'll document all of that. I'll need you to keep a log starting today. Every interaction with Sophie, every time your husband is or isn't present, everything. We're building a case that you're the primary caregiver and the parent with the strongest bond. They discussed logistics for an hour. Natasha would file for divorce, seek primary physical custody with Gerald having supervised visitation until his commitment to parenting could be established. She would request the house and half of all assets. James was confident she had a strong case. One more thing, Natasha said as the meeting was wrapping up. My sister who assaulted my daughter? Her former college roommate is the woman my husband is having an affair with. James's pen stopped moving. Excuse me? I didn't realize it until yesterday. I was looking through Gerald's phone while he was sleeping. There were photos. I recognized her from Monique's wedding years ago. Her name is Simone. She was in the bridal party. So your sister introduced your husband to his affair partner? I don't know if she introduced them or if they reconnected on their own. But yes, that's the connection. James sat back in his chair. That's going to play very well in custody discussions. Your sister assaults your child out of jealousy, and it turns out she's connected to your husband's infidelity? It paints a picture of people in your life who don't have your daughter's best interests at heart. Natasha felt a bitter satisfaction. The pieces were falling into place. Monique's jealousy. Gerald's affair. How had she been so blind to all of it? By the time Natasha picked up Sophie from her parents' house that afternoon, she felt like she had run a marathon. Her mother opened the door with a tight expression. Where have you been all day? Her mother demanded. I've been calling. I had appointments. What kind of appointments? Natasha looked past her mother to where Sophie was playing in the living room with coloring books. The bruise on Sophie's face was fading to yellow and purple now, still clearly visible. Legal appointments. I've filed a civil suit against Monique. And I'm filing for divorce from Gerald. Her mother's face went pale then red. You're what? I'm protecting my daughter. Since no one else seems interested in doing that. Natasha, this is insane. You can't sue your own sister. Watch me. Her father appeared in the doorway looking tired. Is this really necessary? Can't we handle this as a family? Family would have protected Sophie, Natasha said quietly. Family would have been horrified at what Monique did. Instead, you've all been making excuses for her and telling me to let it go. She's sorry? Her mother insisted. She called here crying. She said she didn't mean to hit Sophie so hard. She didn't mean to hit her so hard, Natasha repeated slowly. Not that she didn't mean to hit her at all. Just that she didn't mean for it to leave such obvious evidence. Her parents exchanged glances. Sophie had noticed the raised voices and was watching them nervously from the living room. Come on, baby, Natasha said to Sophie. Time to go home. We're not done talking about this, her mother said. Yes, we are. Unless you want to discuss how you're going to support your granddaughter through this instead of the person who hurt her. Sophie gathered her backpack and coloring books. She took Natasha's hand, pressing close to her side. As they walked to the car, Sophie looked up with worried eyes. Is Grandma mad at you? Grandma is confused about what's important right now. But we know what's important. Right, Mommy? Right, baby. We know exactly what's important. That night, after Sophie was in bed, Natasha sat at the kitchen table surrounded by papers. 2 lawsuits to file. A divorce to navigate. A daughter to protect and help heal. A job she'd been neglecting for days and would need to explain her absences to. Her phone rang. An unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. Mrs. Morrison? This is Grace Chin from Channel 7 News. We received footage of the incident at the SpellingBee last week. We'd like to do a story about child safety at competitive events. Would you be willing to comment? Natasha's first instinct was to say no. Her mother's voice in her head, don't air family problems in public. But then she thought about Sophie's bruised face. About the messages from her family pressuring her to stay silent. About how many other children might be dealing with aggressive parents at these competitions. Yes, Natasha said. I'll talk to you. I think people should know what can happen when adults put too much pressure on children to win. After she hung up, she texted Rebecca Thompson. The news wants to interview me about the case. Is that okay? The response came quickly. It's your choice. It could help or hurt depending on how you handle it. If you decide to do it, stick to facts. No emotional outbursts. Tell the truth calmly. Natasha confirmed the interview for the next day. Then she opened her laptop and started typing. If she was going to do this, she was going to do it right. She wrote out exactly what had happened. The spelling bee. The victory. The assault. The aftermath. Every fact, clearly stated, without exaggeration or emotional language. Just the truth. When she was done, it was after midnight. Natasha saved the document and shut her laptop. Tomorrow she would tell her story to the news. She would let people see what happened when jealousy and pressure overtook common sense and family bonds. And if her family was embarrassed? If Monique faced public consequences? Good. Maybe that's exactly what needed to happen for anything to change. The television interview aired on Tuesday evening. Natasha sat on her couch with Sophie beside her, both of them watching as her own face appeared on screen. She looked tired in the footage but steady. Determined. My daughter won the district spelling bee fair and square, on screen Natasha said to the reporter. She studied for months. She earned that victory. And her aunt, my sister, responded by slapping her across the face in front of dozens of witnesses because she couldn't handle that her daughter came in second place. The camera cut to footage from the spelling bee parking lot. Someone's cell phone video, shaky but clear. There was Sophie holding Natasha's hand, both of them smiling. Then Monique approached, shouting. The slap echoed even through the phone's microphone. Sophie's head snapped to the side. Sophie made a small sound beside her on the couch. Natasha muted the television and pulled her daughter close. You okay, baby? I didn't know people were recording. Are you upset about it? Sophie thought about this. No. I'm glad. Now everyone knows what really happened. Aunt Monique can't say I was lying. Natasha's heart ached with pride and sadness. 7 years old and already learning that evidence mattered, that people would doubt her, that she needed proof to be believed. The interview continued on screen, the reporter's voice explaining in text at the bottom that criminal charges were pending and a civil lawsuit had been filed. The camera showed the spelling bee trophy, the hospital records with their images of Sophie's bruised face, the police report. Natasha's phone started buzzing immediately. She turned it off. She knew what the messages would say. Her family would be furious that she'd gone public. Let them be furious. The story was picked up by other news outlets overnight. By Wednesday morning, it was trending on social media. Hashtag spelling bee assault was everywhere. People were outraged. Think pieces appeared about competitive parenting, about family violence, about protecting children from adults who cared more about winning than well-being. Monique's name was included in some of the reports. Her photo appeared. People found her social media accounts, saw years of posts about Brittany's achievements, about the gifted program, about how special and talented her daughter was. The internet was not kind. Neither was the prosecutor's office. On Wednesday afternoon, Rebecca Thompson called with news. They're adding charges, she said. In addition to assault on a minor, they're charging your sister with child endangerment and criminal battery. The publicity has put pressure on them to take this seriously. Is that good? For your civil case? Yes. It establishes clearly that what she did was criminal. For your sister? It's much more serious than she probably expected. That same afternoon, Natasha met with James Rodriguez again. He had news too. I've been going through your husband's financial records, James said, spreading papers across his desk. Your husband has been very creative with marital assets. Natasha leaned forward. What do you mean? He's been siphoning money out of your joint accounts for months. Small amounts at a time. A few hundred here, 1,000 there. It's all been going to a separate account in his name only. How much? So far I've tracked about $40,000. Natasha's stomach dropped. 40,000? That's just what I've found so far. I'm still digging. James pulled out another document. He's also been paying rent on an apartment. The same apartment complex you photographed. Not for his girlfriend. For himself. I don't understand. Your husband has been preparing to leave you for months. He has an apartment already set up, a separate bank account funded with marital money, and a plan. The affair was just part of it. Natasha felt cold. He was planning to take everything and leave. Looks that way. There's more. I've found evidence that he's been undervaluing his salary to the company. He took a pay cut on paper 6 months ago, but I've spoken to people who work there. He's still making the same amount. The difference is going somewhere. Where? I don't know yet. But I will find out. Natasha thought about all those late nights. All those business trips. All the time she'd believed him when he said he was working for their future, for their family. There's something else you should know, James continued. I spoke with the woman who lives next door to your husband's apartment. She's very chatty. She told me your husband has had multiple women visiting that apartment over the past 6 months. Not just Simone. The room seemed to tilt. Multiple women? I don't have proof yet, but I'm working on it. Security cameras in the building, witness statements, that sort of thing. But if it's true, your husband hasn't just been having an affair. He's been living an entirely separate life. Natasha sat back in her chair trying to process this. Everything she had thought she knew about her marriage, about Gerald, was a lie. While she had been home with Sophie, managing the household, trusting him, he had been building an exit strategy that would leave her with nothing. Can we get the money back? She asked. The $40,000? We'll demand it in the divorce settlement. He moved marital assets without your knowledge. That's going to look very bad for him in court. What else do we need to prove this? James smiled grimly. You let me worry about that. But I will need you to do something for me. I need access to the house to look for documents. Financial records, papers he might have hidden, anything that shows his planning. He moved out. He took some clothes but left most of his things. I can let you in. Perfect. I'll bring a forensic accountant. We're going to find every penny he tried to hide. That evening, Natasha sat with Sophie working on homework when her phone rang. A number she didn't recognize but local. Hello. Natasha, it's Monique. Natasha's hand tightened on the phone. She hadn't spoken to her sister since the SpellingBee parking lot. You shouldn't be calling me. I have a lawyer. I know. I saw the news. How could you do that to me? To our family? How could I? Natasha's voice was ice. You hit my daughter in the face. You assaulted a 7-year-old child out of jealousy. And you're asking how I could do this to you. I made a mistake. I lost my temper. But you've destroyed my reputation. People are sending me death threats. I lost my job. You lost your job because you committed assault on a minor on camera. That's called consequences. I'm your sister. You were my sister. Then you hurt my child. There was silence on the line. Then Monique's voice, smaller now. I didn't mean to hurt her that badly. Brittany has struggled so much with school. The gifted program was supposed to help her confidence. And then Sophie just wins everything so easily. It's not fair. Life isn't fair. But that doesn't give you the right to hit a child. What about Simone? Monique asked suddenly. Natasha froze. What about her? You're going after Gerald in the divorce. Taking everything. But Simone is involved too. She broke up your marriage. Did you introduce them? Natasha asked directly. Silence. Then, she asked about him at my birthday party last year. Said she remembered him being cute at the wedding. I thought they were just flirting. I didn't know it would turn into an affair. But you didn't stop it. I didn't know. You knew enough. You saw them together at family events. You never said anything. More silence. Natasha could hear Monique breathing, could imagine her sister trying to find the right words to defend herself. You've always had everything, Monique said finally. The perfect marriage, the smart daughter, the nice house. Meanwhile, I'm a single mom struggling to make Brittany's life special. Maybe part of me was glad when things started to fall apart for you. Natasha closed her eyes. There it was. The truth under all the excuses. You were glad my marriage was falling apart. Not glad. Just less alone. And when my daughter beat yours at the spelling bee, that was too much. You couldn't even have that one thing. I'm sorry, okay? I'm sorry I hit Sophie. I'm sorry about all of it. Can't you drop the lawsuit? We can work this out as family. No. Natasha, please. The criminal charges are enough. Do you have to sue me too? I don't have money for this. I'll lose everything. You should have thought of that before you hit my daughter. She's fine. The bruise is healing. Why are you being so vindictive? Natasha thought about that word. Vindictive. as if seeking justice for assault on a child was just petty revenge. Because you need to understand, Natasha said quietly, that there are consequences for hurting people. Real consequences. Not just apologies and excuses and family pressure to forgive. You traumatized my daughter. You showed her that family members can hurt her and get away with it. I won't let that lesson stand. So you're going to destroy me. I'm going to hold you accountable. There's a difference. Natasha hung up. Her hands were shaking. Sophie was watching from the dining table, her homework forgotten. Was that Aunt Monique? Yes. What did she want? For me to drop the lawsuit. Are you going to? Natasha met her daughter's eyes. No, baby. I'm not. Sophie nodded. Good. She should have consequences. Later that night, after Sophie was asleep, Natasha received an email from James Rodriguez. The subject line read, "You need to see this." She opened it to find photographs. Security camera footage from Gerald's apartment building. Time-stamped images of Gerald entering with different women over the past 6 months. 5 different women. None of them Simone. There was also a bank statement. An account she had never seen before. With deposits totaling over $70,000. All of it money from their joint accounts, transferred slowly over 8 months. Natasha read James's message below the attachments. Your husband has been planning this for nearly a year. He's been hiding money, underreporting income, and yes, seeing multiple women. I have evidence of at least 5 different affair partners. He was planning to leave you with nothing and claim you were an unfit mother to get primary custody of Sophie. We have all the evidence we need to destroy his case. Call me in the morning. We need to move fast. Natasha sat in the dark living room, the glow of her laptop the only light. Her marriage had been a lie for almost a year. Gerald hadn't just had an affair. He had systematically planned to destroy her life, take her daughter, and leave her with nothing. And Monique had been complicit, introducing him to at least one of his affair partners, watching it happen, saying nothing. The rage that had been simmering since the SpellingBee parking lot crystallized into something hard and focused. They had underestimated her. They had thought she would be passive, accepting, willing to forgive and forget for the sake of peace. They were wrong. Natasha opened a new email and started typing. To James Rodriguez, to Rebecca Thompson, to the prosecutor handling Monique's criminal case. She attached every piece of evidence she had. Every text message, every photograph, every document. Then she wrote one more email. To the reporter who had interviewed her. I have new information about the case. My sister was connected to my husband's affair. This goes deeper than just the assault. Are you interested in a follow-up story? The response came in minutes. Absolutely. When can we talk? Natasha scheduled the interview for Friday. Then she finally went to bed, but she didn't sleep. She lay in the dark, planning, strategizing, thinking 3 moves ahead. They wanted to play games with her life? Fine. She'd show them what happened when you push someone too far. She'd show them all. The courtroom was smaller than Natasha expected. She sat in the gallery behind the prosecutor's table, watching as people filed in for Monique's criminal arraignment. Her sister entered in a gray suit, hair pulled back, looking smaller somehow. Diminished. Their parents sat on Monique's side of the courtroom. They hadn't looked at Natasha when she came in. The divide was complete now. Sides had been chosen. The judge was a woman in her 60s with reading glasses and an expression that suggested she had seen everything and was impressed by nothing. She reviewed the charges against Monique, asked if she understood them, asked how she pleaded. Not guilty, Your Honor, Monique's lawyer said. The judge set a trial date 2 months away. Bail was set. Monique's lawyer posted it immediately. The whole thing took less than 15 minutes. As people filed out, Natasha's mother finally approached her in the hallway. I hope you're happy, her mother said. Your sister has a criminal record now. Do you know what this will do to her job prospects? To Brittany? She has a criminal record because she committed a crime, Natasha replied evenly. Not because I reported it. You could have handled this privately. Like you wanted me to? By pretending it didn't happen? By teaching Sophie that family members can hurt her without consequences. Her father put a hand on her mother's arm. Let's go. As they walked away, Natasha heard her mother say, I don't even know her anymore. The words hurt. But not as much as they would have a month ago. Natasha was learning that sometimes the people who say they love you are really just comfortable with who you used to be. The version of you that didn't make waves or demand justice or protect yourself. She wasn't that version anymore. The civil trial for the lawsuit against Monique was scheduled for 3 weeks later. Rebecca Thompson prepared Natasha thoroughly. They practiced testimony, reviewed evidence, discussed what the defense might argue. They'll try to paint you as vindictive, Rebecca explained, as someone using the legal system for revenge because you're angry about your divorce. I filed the lawsuit before I knew about the full extent of Gerald's planning. I know. But they'll imply the timing is suspicious. That you're lashing out at your whole family because your marriage fell apart. So how do we counter that? By focusing on Sophie. This isn't about you. It's about protecting a child who was assaulted. Every time they try to make it about you, we redirect to the injury, the trauma, the assault itself. The day of the civil trial, Natasha dressed carefully in a navy suit. Professional but not flashy. She wanted to look like exactly what she was, a mother protecting her child. Sophie had to testify. It was the hardest part of the whole process. Rebecca had prepared her too, had explained what would happen, had made it as easy as possible. But at the end of the day, a 7-year-old child had to stand in a courtroom and describe being hit by her aunt. The judge allowed Sophie to testify from chambers rather than in open court. Only the lawyers, the judge, a court reporter, and Natasha were present. Sophie sat in a large leather chair, her feet not quite touching the ground, and answered questions in a clear, small voice. "Can you tell me what happened after the spelling bee?" the prosecutor asked gently. "I won," Sophie said. "I spelled, triumphant, and I won the trophy. Mommy and I were walking to the car and I was happy. Then Aunt Monique came over and she was yelling." "What was she yelling about?" "She said I cheated. That Brittany was supposed to win because she's in the gifted program. But I didn't cheat. I studied my words every night with Mommy." "What happened next?" Sophie's hand went to her cheek, an unconscious gesture. "She hit me. Right here. It hurt really bad and I fell down. Everyone was staring. I was embarrassed and my face hurt and I didn't understand why she was so mad." "Did your aunt say anything else?" "She said Brittany was the gifted one, not me. She said I was just regular. Made me feel bad. Like being smart doesn't count if you're not in a special program." The prosecutor showed Sophie the photographs from the hospital. "Is this your face after your aunt hit you?" Sophie looked at the images and nodded. "Yes. It was purple and yellow for a long time. Kids at school asked me what happened. I had to explain that my aunt hit me. It was embarrassing." "Are you scared of your aunt now?" Sophie thought about this carefully. "I don't want to be around her. I don't trust her anymore. I thought she loved me but she hurt me because I won. What if I win at something else? Will she hit me again?" After Sophie's testimony, the judge called a recess. Natasha found Sophie in the hallway, hugging her tightly. "You did so good, baby. I'm so proud of you. Can we go home now?" "Soon. There's just a little more left." The trial reconvened. Witnesses from the spelling bee testified. 3 different parents described what they saw. The video footage was played on a screen for the jury. Natasha watched their faces as they saw Monique hit Sophie. Several jurors looked disturbed. The medical expert who examined Sophie testified about the injury. "The force required to leave this kind of bruising on a child's face is significant. This wasn't a light tap. The child was struck hard enough to cause substantial pain and visible injury that lasted over a week." Monique's lawyer tried to argue that it was a momentary lapse in judgment, that Monique was deeply sorry, that she had been under stress and lost control. He presented character witnesses who talked about what a good mother Monique was, how she volunteered at Brittany's school, how she had never been violent before. But then the prosecutor presented evidence of a pattern. Text messages where Monique complained about Sophie's achievements, social media posts where she compared the girls, emails to the school questioning why Sophie was in advanced reading while Brittany wasn't. This wasn't a momentary lapse, the prosecutor argued. This was the culmination of years of jealousy and unhealthy competition with her sister's child. When that child finally succeeded in a way that couldn't be dismissed or minimized, the defendant lashed out with violence. Rebecca Thompson presented the civil case with precision. Medical bills, pain and suffering, emotional distress, loss of enjoyment of life for a child who now feared family gatherings. She argued for $50,000 in damages. Monique's lawyer countered that the amount was excessive, that Sophie was healing fine, that there was no permanent injury. Rebecca's response was sharp. There may be no permanent physical injury. But what about the permanent emotional injury of learning that family members who claim to love you will hurt you if you outshine them? What about the permanent lesson that success is dangerous? That being smart and talented makes you a target? Those injuries don't heal in a week. The jury deliberated for 3 hours. When they returned, the forewoman read the verdict. "We find in favor of the plaintiff, Natasha Morrison, on behalf of minor child Sophie Morrison. We award damages in the amount of $60,000. Natasha felt the air leave her lungs. They had won. More than she asked for. The jury had seen the truth and responded. Monique made a sound like a wounded animal. Their mother was crying. Their father sat stone-faced. Outside the courtroom, reporters were waiting. The case had attracted media attention because of the earlier news coverage. Rebecca made a brief statement. Justice was served today for a child who was assaulted simply for being talented. This verdict sends a message that children deserve protection, even from family members. A reporter called out, "Natasha, how does it feel to sue your own sister?" Natasha stepped forward. "It feels like protecting my daughter. Which is what I'll always do. Family doesn't mean accepting abuse. It means holding each other to high standards and facing consequences when we fail to meet them." The criminal trial for Monique's assault charge was scheduled for 2 weeks later. That trial was quicker. The evidence was overwhelming. The jury took less than an hour to find Monique guilty of assault on a minor and child endangerment. The judge sentenced her to 1 year in jail, suspended to probation, 200 hours of community service, mandatory anger management classes, and 5 years probation. If she violated probation or committed any other offense, the jail time would be enforced. Monique wept as the sentence was read. Brittany, sitting with Natasha's parents, cried too. Natasha felt a pang of sympathy for her niece. None of this was Brittany's fault. She was just a child caught in her mother's jealousy and rage. After it was all over, after the courtroom emptied and the reporters dispersed, Natasha sat in her car in the parking garage. She had won both cases. Monique would pay damages, serve probation, and have a criminal record. Justice had been served. So why didn't she feel satisfied? Her phone rang. Gerald's lawyer. "Mrs. Morrison, we need to schedule a meeting about the divorce settlement. My client is willing to negotiate. Tell your client to talk to my lawyer. I have nothing to say to him." She hung up. James Rodriguez had sent her an update that morning. They had found more hidden assets. Gerald had been even more dishonest than they initially discovered. The total amount he'd hidden was over $90,000. James was building a case that would demolish Gerald's attempt to claim he deserved primary custody or a larger share of assets. The evidence of multiple affairs, hidden money, and parental neglect was damning. Natasha drove home, picked up Sophie from school, and made dinner. Normal things. Routine things. But nothing felt normal anymore. She had sued her sister, exposed her husband, broken with her parents. She had won in court. Twice. But she had also lost her family. The family she had grown up with, the sister she had loved, the parents who she thought would always support her. That night, Sophie climbed into bed with her, something she hadn't done in months. "Mommy? Are you sad?" "A little bit, baby." "Because of Aunt Monique?" "Because of all of it. The divorce, the lawsuit, Grandma and Grandpa being mad at me." Sophie was quiet for a moment. Then, "I'm not sad. I'm glad." Natasha looked at her daughter. "Glad? We're safer now. Aunt Monique can't hurt me. Daddy can't lie to you. We know who really cares about us." Sophie snuggled closer. It's better to be safe than to pretend everything is okay when it's not. Out of the mouths of children, Natasha thought again. Her 7-year-old daughter understood something it had taken Natasha 32 years to learn. That false peace is worse than difficult truth. "You're right, baby. It is better. And Mommy? You're really brave. You protected me even when everyone was mad at you. That's what real love is." Natasha held her daughter close, tears finally falling. She had lost her family of origin. But she had protected the family that mattered most. Her daughter. Herself. The life they would build together. That was worth all the rest. The connection between Gerald and Monique had always been there, lurking at the edge of Natasha's awareness. Family dinners where they talked too long. Jokes between them that Natasha didn't quite understand. Monique texting Gerald about Brittany's school events and him actually responding when he ignored Natasha's messages about Sophie. Now, sitting across from James Rodriguez with a folder full of phone records, the pattern was impossible to ignore. "Look at these call logs," James said, highlighting entries on the printout. "Your husband called your sister 43 times in the 6 months before you separated. She called him 61 times. They were planning something. More than planning. Look at the dates." James pointed to clusters of calls. "Right after your anniversary dinner when you told me Gerald seemed distant. Right before he claimed he had to travel for work but was actually at that apartment. Right after Sophie won her first spelling bee 3 months ago." Natasha's stomach turned. Monique was keeping him updated about Sophie. And probably doing more than that. I've been going through the text messages we recovered from his phone backup. James pulled out another document. Your sister was actively encouraging the affair. Look at this one from 3 months ago. The text message was displayed on the page. Simone says Natasha has no idea. You're being too careful. Just file for divorce already. Tell the court she's an unstable mother and get full custody. Trust me, I know my sister. She'll fold. Natasha read it 3 times. Her own sister. Advising her husband on how to destroy her and take her child. There's more, James said quietly. He showed her another text, this one from Monique to Simone. Keep doing what you're doing. Once Natasha is out of the picture, Gerald can do better. She's always been so needy anyway. Maybe losing everything will teach her humility. She wanted me to lose everything, Natasha whispered. It appears your sister has been working against you for a long time. The SpellingBee assault wasn't an isolated incident. It was part of a pattern of undermining you. James showed her more evidence. Emails where Monique told people about Gerald's affair before Natasha even knew. Messages to family members painting Natasha as a bad mother, too focused on Sophie's achievements, pushing her daughter too hard. She was building a narrative, Natasha realized. Setting it up so when Gerald filed for divorce and claimed I was unfit, people would believe it. Exactly. Your sister is many things, but she's not stupid. She was laying groundwork. But why? What did she gain from any of this? James leaned back in his chair. From what I can tell, your sister wanted to see you fail. To prove that she wasn't the only one struggling. That your perfect life was a lie. There's a psychological term for it, Schadenfreude. Joy in others' suffering. Natasha thought about their childhood. How their parents had always compared them. How Monique had never quite measured up in their mother's eyes. How Natasha's early marriage to Gerald had been held up as proof of her success while Monique's divorce was treated as failure. She had never wanted that comparison. She had tried to support Monique. But maybe her very existence had been a threat. We can use this in the divorce, James continued. Your husband conspiring with your sister to take your child? To paint you as unstable? The family court judge will not look kindly on that. What about Simone? What about her? Can we go after her? For alienation of affection or something? James shook his head. California doesn't recognize alienation of affection claims. But we don't need to sue her. She's Gerald's problem now. And from what I've been hearing, she's not happy about being exposed publicly. Good. There's something else you should know. James pulled out another document. Gerald has been taking money from Sophie's college fund. Small withdrawals over time. About $15,000 total. Natasha's hands clenched into fists. He stole from his own daughter? That's how the court will see it. He had access to that account as a joint holder. He moved money out systematically. We can prove where it went, to that separate account, to funding his apartment, to paying for hotel rooms with his various affair partners. I want it back. All of it. We'll demand it in the settlement. Plus interest. Plus compensation for the breach of fiduciary duty to his daughter. The divorce proceedings intensified over the next week. Gerald's lawyer tried to negotiate, arguing that Natasha was being unreasonable in her demands. She wanted the house, primary custody, child support, and full repayment of all hidden marital assets plus the college fund theft. Gerald's lawyer countered with an offer. Joint custody, Gerald keeps his retirement accounts, they split the house equity 50-50, no repayment of the college fund. Natasha's response was delivered through James. Absolutely not. See you in court. Gerald tried calling her directly, something he wasn't supposed to do. Natasha recorded the call. You're being ridiculous, Gerald said. I made one mistake and you're destroying my entire life. One mistake. You had multiple affairs, hid almost $100,000, stole from your daughter's college fund, and conspired with my sister to take Sophie away from me. That's not one mistake. That's a calculated plan. The judge will see you're just being vindictive. The judge will see evidence of everything you did. Phone records, bank statements, video footage, text messages with Monique about how to make me look unstable. How do you think that will play? Silence on the line. Then, what do you want? I want what I'm entitled to. What Sophie is entitled to. I want you to pay for your choices. I can't afford what you're asking for. The lawyer's fees alone are destroying me. Then maybe you should have thought about that before you started lying. She hung up, played the recording for James. Is this helpful? Very. He admitted on tape that he conspired with your sister. That strengthens our case even more. The divorce trial was set for 6 weeks away. In the meantime, Natasha focused on rebuilding her life. She had gone back to work at the marketing firm where she'd been employed part-time. Her boss, understanding about the legal proceedings, had given her flexibility with hours. But Natasha found herself thinking bigger. The lawsuits, the media attention, the process of fighting for Sophie, it had awakened something in her. A sense of purpose she hadn't felt in years. One evening, she sat at the kitchen table with her laptop, researching nonprofit organizations that help children in competitive academic environments. There were programs for bullying prevention, for mental health support, but nothing specifically addressing the pressure and family dysfunction that could surround children who excelled academically. Sophie watched from the couch, working on homework. "What are you doing, Mommy?" "Research for an idea I have." "What kind of idea?" "What if we helped other kids like you? Kids whose families put too much pressure on them. Or kids who get hurt because their parents are too competitive." Sophie's eyes lit up. "Like a support group?" "Maybe. Or maybe something bigger. A program to teach families how to support gifted kids without hurting them." "That sounds good. Lots of kids at my school have mean parents about grades." Natasha started taking notes. A nonprofit focused on healthy competitive parenting. Resources for families. Advocacy for children. Support groups. Educational programs. The settlement money from the lawsuit against Monique would be $60,000. She could use that to start something. Build something meaningful out of all this pain. Her phone buzzed with a text from Rebecca Thompson. "Court date set for Monique's appeal of the civil judgment. She's trying to get the amount reduced. Are you prepared for another fight?" Natasha typed back, "Absolutely. We won once. We'll win again." She was tired of fighting. Tired of courtrooms and lawyers and family drama. But she wouldn't back down. Not now. Not when she was so close to being free of all of it. The next morning, Natasha received a call from her mother. The first time they'd spoken since the civil trial. "Your sister is having a hard time," her mother said without preamble. "She can't find work with a criminal record. She's struggling to pay rent. Brittany is seeing a therapist because of all this stress." "I'm sorry Brittany is struggling. She doesn't deserve any of this. Neither does Monique. She made one mistake." "No, Mom. She made dozens of mistakes over years. The assault was just the one that happened publicly. We're family. Family forgives. Family also protects children. You chose Monique's comfort over Sophie's safety. That's your choice to live with. When did you become so cold?" "When I realized that being warm got my daughter hurt." "I'm not cold. I'm clear. There's a difference." Her mother hung up without saying goodbye. Natasha stood in her kitchen, feeling the familiar ache of family rejection, but also feeling something new. Relief. She didn't have to carry their dysfunction anymore. She didn't have to twist herself into shapes to keep the peace. She could just be herself. Protect her daughter. Build her life. That was enough. That evening, Sophie came home from school with an announcement. "I signed up for the state spelling bee. It's in 2 months." Natasha's heart clenched. After everything that had happened at the district B, Sophie was willing to compete again. "Are you sure, baby? After what happened last time?" "I'm not going to let Aunt Monique ruin spelling bees for me. I'm good at spelling. I like it. She doesn't get to take that away." Natasha hugged her daughter tightly. 7 years old and already learning to reclaim joy from trauma. Already learning that the best response to people who try to diminish you is to shine even brighter. "Then we'll study together every night," Natasha promised. "And I'll be there cheering for you no matter what happens." "Will Daddy come?" Natasha thought about Gerald, about his complete disinterest in Sophie's achievements, about how he had used her as a pawn in his plans. "I don't know, baby. He's welcome to if he wants to. But even if he doesn't, you'll have me. And that's enough." Sophie nodded. "Yeah. You're enough, Mommy." In that moment, sitting in their living room with divorce papers pending and family ties severed, Natasha felt something click into place. She was enough. She had always been enough. She just had to stop letting other people convince her otherwise. The courtroom for the divorce trial was larger than the ones for Monique's cases. Natasha sat at the plaintiff's table with James Rodriguez, a thick folder of evidence in front of them. Across the aisle, Gerald sat with his lawyer, looking defeated already. James had warned her that Gerald would try to appear sympathetic. The wronged husband whose wife overreacted to a simple affair. The father being kept from his daughter by a vindictive ex. But Natasha had evidence. Mountains of it. The judge was a man in his late 50s named Harrison Shin, known for being thorough and fair but having no patience for deception. James had been pleased when they drew his courtroom. The trial began with opening statements. Gerald's lawyer painted a picture of a man who made a mistake, yes, but who loved his daughter and deserved joint custody and a fair division of assets. James's opening was devastating. Your Honor, this isn't a case about one mistake. This is a case about systematic deception, financial fraud, conspiracy to commit parental alienation, and theft from a child's college fund. Over the next few days, we will present evidence that Mr. Morrison planned for nearly a year to leave his wife with nothing while taking their daughter away based on lies about her fitness as a mother. The first witness was the forensic accountant James had hired. She walked the court through every hidden account, every transfer, every lie about Gerald's income. The total amount hidden, $92,000. Gerald's lawyer tried to argue that these were legitimate business accounts, money set aside for investments. The accountant calmly shredded that argument with documentation showing the money had been used for personal expenses, rent on an apartment, hotel rooms, gifts to multiple women. This wasn't investing for the family's future, the accountant concluded. This was a man systematically stealing from his own family to fund an alternative lifestyle. The next witness was a private investigator James had hired. She presented surveillance footage, photographs, phone records showing Gerald with 5 different women over 6 months, including Simone. We tracked Mr. Morrison's movements on 14 separate occasions when he told his wife he was working late, the investigator testified. In each case, he was at his apartment with various female companions. Gerald's face reddened as the evidence mounted. His lawyer objected repeatedly, claiming invasion of privacy, but the judge overruled. This is a divorce proceeding where custody of a minor child is at stake. The father's pattern of deception is absolutely relevant. Then came the text messages. James had recovered thousands of them from cloud backups. Messages between Gerald and Monique planning how to make Natasha look unstable. Messages between Gerald and Simone laughing about how clueless Natasha was. Messages between Gerald and the other women. One exchange in particular made the courtroom go silent. Gerald to Monique, how do I make the court see she's not fit to have primary custody? Monique to Gerald, plant the idea that she's too focused on Sophie's achievements. That she's living through her daughter. I'll back you up. Everyone knows she pushes Sophie too hard. Gerald to Monique, what about the money? She'll notice eventually. Monique to Gerald, by then it won't matter. Once you have custody, what's she going to do? She'll have no leverage. The judge looked up from reading the messages, his expression hard. These text messages are authentic? Verified by a digital forensics expert, Your Honor, James confirmed. Gerald's lawyer scrambled. Your Honor, these messages are taken out of context. The context appears quite clear to me, Judge Chin interrupted. Proceed. Sophie had to testify about her relationship with her father. The court appointed a child advocate to help her, a kind woman who explained everything carefully. Sophie testified from chambers again, like in Monique's trial. How often does your father help you with homework? The advocate asked gently. He doesn't. Mommy helps me every night. Does your father attend your school events? No. He used to sometimes, but not for a long time. Mommy always comes. How do you feel about your father? Sophie thought carefully. I love him because he's my dad. But I don't feel close to him. He's like someone who lives in our house but doesn't really know me. If the judge asked you where you want to live, what would you say? With Mommy. Always with Mommy. She's the one who takes care of me. Gerald's lawyer tried to argue that Sophie was being coached, that Natasha had poisoned their daughter against him. But the child advocate's report was clear. Sophie's feelings were genuine, based on years of neglect and emotional absence from her father. On the 3rd day of trial, Natasha testified. James walked her through the marriage, the slow dissolution, the discovery of the affair, finding the hidden money. When did you first realize your marriage was in trouble? James asked. Looking back, I think it was in trouble for over a year. But I was so busy trying to keep everything together, raising Sophie, managing the household, that I didn't see what was happening until it was too late. Did your husband participate in parenting? Not really. He provided financially, or I thought he did. But he wasn't present. He didn't know Sophie's teachers' names or her friends, or what she was studying. He missed her school concerts, her spelling bees, her birthday parties. When he was home, he was locked in his office or on his phone. How did you feel when you discovered the affair? Betrayed. But also, and not surprised. It explained all the distance, all the late nights. What shocked me was the extent of his planning. He wasn't just having an affair. He was building an entire exit strategy that would leave me with nothing and take my daughter from me. Gerald's lawyer cross-examined her aggressively, trying to paint her as a controlling wife who drove her husband away, as an obsessive mother who pushed Sophie too hard. "Isn't it true that you enrolled Sophie in competitive spelling bees against her wishes?" he demanded. "No. Sophie loves spelling. She asked to compete. But you pushed her to study every night?" "I helped her study because she wanted to improve. That's what parents do. They support their children's interests, even when those interests lead to violence. Your own sister assaulted your daughter at one of these competitions." James shot to his feet. "Objection. That assault was the result of the sister's jealousy and rage, not anything my client did. And frankly, this line of questioning is blaming the victim." "Sustained," Judge Chin said sharply. "Counsel, do not attempt to blame Mrs. Morrison for her sister's criminal behavior." The trial continued for 4 days. Gerald testified in his own defense, trying to explain away the evidence. Yes, he'd hidden money, but he was planning to surprise Natasha with an investment property. Yes, he'd had affairs, but the marriage was already over. Yes, he'd texted with Monique, but they were just venting about family stress. James dismantled every lie with evidence. There was no investment property. The marriage wasn't over. Natasha had been trying to save it while Gerald was planning to destroy her. The texts with Monique weren't venting, they were conspiracy. On the final day, both lawyers gave closing arguments. Gerald's lawyer made a last desperate attempt to paint his client as a flawed but loving father who deserved a second chance. James's closing was surgical. "Your Honor, the evidence is clear. Mr. Morrison is not a flawed man who made mistakes. He is a calculating individual who systematically deceived his wife, stole from his family, conspired with his wife's sister to commit parental alienation, and prioritized his own desires over his daughter's well-being for over a year. He doesn't deserve a second chance. He deserves consequences." Judge Chin took only 1 day to issue his ruling. When court reconvened, Natasha sat straight in her chair, hands folded, heart pounding. The judge's voice was steady and clear. "In the matter of Morrison versus Morrison, I find the evidence presented by Mrs. Morrison to be credible, well-documented, and damning. Mr. Morrison engaged in fraud, deception, and parental neglect. His actions demonstrate a clear disregard for his family's welfare and his daughter's best interests." Gerald slumped in his chair. "Therefore, I award primary physical custody of Sophie Morrison to her mother, Natasha Morrison. Mr. Morrison will have supervised visitation every other weekend until he can demonstrate sustained commitment to his daughter's welfare. He will pay child support according to state guidelines based on his actual income, not the underreported amount he claimed." The judge continued. "All marital assets will be divided with Mrs. Morrison receiving 60% and Mr. Morrison receiving 40%, taking into account his fraudulent concealment of assets. Mr. Morrison will return all money taken from Sophie's college fund plus interest within 30 days. He will also pay Mrs. Morrison's legal fees in full." Natasha felt tears prick her eyes. She had won. Completely. "Furthermore," the judge said, his tone hardening, "I am ordering a criminal referral to the district attorney's office regarding Mr. Morrison's systematic fraud and theft from his daughter's college fund. This behavior may warrant prosecution beyond this civil proceeding." Gerald's face went white. His lawyer whispered urgently in his ear. The judge slammed his gavel. "This court is adjourned." In the hallway, James shook Natasha's hand. "Complete victory. I've never seen a judge come down that hard on someone. What happens next?" "Gerald's lawyer will likely appeal, but they have no grounds. The evidence was overwhelming. You'll get the house, the money, primary custody, everything you asked for and more. And the criminal referral? That's up to the DA's office. They may or may not pursue charges. But even the threat of it will keep Gerald in line." Natasha walked out of the courthouse into bright sunshine. For the first time in months she felt light. The weight of the marriage, the betrayal, the fight, all of it lifting. Her phone rang. Sophie calling from her parents' house, where she was staying during the trial. "Mommy? Did we win?" "Yes, baby. We won." Sophie's delighted squeal made Natasha laugh. "Can we celebrate with ice cream?" "We can celebrate however you want." That evening, Natasha and Sophie sat at their favorite ice cream shop, splitting a banana split. Sophie chattered about school, about the spelling bee she was preparing for, about a new friend she'd made. "Mommy, when we get the money from Daddy, can we buy a new house?" "We're keeping our house, baby. But we'll fix it up. Maybe paint your room whatever color you want." "Can we get a dog?" Natasha laughed. Maybe. We'll see. They walked home as the sun set, holding hands. Their house looked different to Natasha now. Not a place she was trapped in a failing marriage. Just home. Her and Sophie's home. The next week, Monique's appeal of the civil judgment was denied. She would pay the full $60,000. Her lawyer sent a message through Rebecca. Monique wanted to negotiate a payment plan. She doesn't have the money all at once, Rebecca explained. She's asking for monthly payments over 5 years. Natasha considered this. She could refuse, force Monique into bankruptcy. Part of her wanted that. The vindictive part that Monique's lawyer had accused her of having. But the better part, the part that was building something new, knew that vengeance wasn't the same as justice. Monthly payments are fine, Natasha said. But if she misses one, I'll pursue full collection. I'll draft the agreement. 2 months after the trials ended, Natasha sat in a lawyer's office for a different reason. She was filing paperwork to establish a non-profit organization. The Educational Advocacy Foundation for Children would provide resources, support groups, and legal assistance to children facing unhealthy family pressure around academic achievement. It would offer counseling, mediation services, and workshops for parents. The seed money was the settlement for Monique's assault case. $60,000 to help other children avoid what Sophie had experienced. Natasha had hired a small team, a child psychologist, a family therapist, and an education specialist. They were developing programs, reaching out to schools, building a website. Felt right. Taking the worst thing that had happened and transforming it into something that could help others. The paperwork was approved in 3 weeks. The Educational Advocacy Foundation for Children was officially a registered nonprofit. Natasha was its founder and director. She had gone from betrayed wife and victim of family violence to business owner and advocate. She had taken back her power, built something meaningful, and she was just getting started. The house felt different after all the furniture was rearranged. Natasha had painted the living room a soft gray, replaced the couch where she discovered Gerald's affair, hung new artwork, bright, optimistic pieces chosen by Sophie. They had donated Gerald's clothes and personal items, keeping only what Sophie wanted. A few photographs, his college sweatshirt that Sophie liked to sleep in. The rest was gone. The marriage was gone. The old life was gone. In its place, possibility. The Educational Advocacy Foundation for Children launched officially in March, 4 months after the SpellingBee assault. Natasha had rented a small office space downtown, hired 2 part-time staff members, and begun accepting clients. The first family who came to them was a mother whose son had been pulled out of advanced classes by his father because the father was jealous of the boy's intelligence. The parents were divorcing, and the mother wanted help fighting for her son's educational rights. Natasha sat with her in the office, listening to the story, seeing herself reflected in this woman's fear and determination. "We can help," Natasha said. "We have a lawyer we work with who specializes in educational advocacy in family court. And our therapist can work with your son to help him process the conflict." The woman started crying. "I thought I was alone in this. I thought no one would understand." "You're not alone. This happens more than people realize. Parents who compete with their children, who sabotage their success out of jealousy or fear. We're here to stop that pattern." Over the next weeks, more families came. A father whose ex-wife was telling their daughter she was too smart for her own good and punishing her for good grades. A grandmother seeking custody of her gifted grandson because both parents were pressuring him to fail to avoid making his siblings jealous. Each case broke Natasha's heart. Each one reinforced why this work mattered. The foundation began offering free support groups for children dealing with family pressure. Sophie attended the first one, nervous but excited to meet other kids who understood what she'd been through. "There were 8 of us," Sophie reported after the first meeting, "and everyone had stories like mine. One girl's dad hit her for getting an A instead of an A+. Another kid's mom makes them study 6 hours every day and screams at them if they miss a question. How did it feel to talk about your experience? Good. Nobody acted like I was weird or like Aunt Monique hitting me was my fault. They got it." The support groups grew. Children's groups, parents groups, family mediation sessions. The foundation's therapist, Dr. Patricia Hayes, was brilliant at creating safe spaces for difficult conversations. Natasha found herself speaking at schools and parent organizations, sharing her story, educating people about the line between supporting excellence and creating toxic pressure. "My daughter won a spelling bee," she would tell audiences. "And her aunt slapped her for it. That's an extreme example. But how many of you have seen parents at sports events screaming at their kids? Teachers being berated for not giving higher grades? Siblings being compared constantly? It's all on the same spectrum of putting adult ego ahead of child welfare. The response was powerful. Parents thanked her for speaking up. Teachers asked for resources. School districts invited the foundation to develop anti-pressure curricula. 6 months after launch, the foundation had helped 43 families, facilitated 12 custody evaluations focused on educational welfare, and prevented at least 3 cases of potential abuse caught early through screening. Natasha had found her purpose. She had also found something else unexpected: peace. Not the false peace of pretending everything was fine. Real peace. The kind that comes from knowing yourself, protecting what matters, and building something meaningful from pain. Sophie thrived in this new environment. She continued competing in spelling bees, winning 2 more district competitions and placing 3rd at state. But the competitions felt different now. Lighter. They were about Sophie's joy in language, not about proving anything to anyone. "I don't even care if I win anymore," Sophie told Natasha before the state bee. "I just like learning the words. And when I get one right, it feels good. That's enough." "When did you get so wise?" "I learned from you, Mommy. You taught me that the best revenge is being happy." Natasha hugged her daughter, throat tight with emotion. 7 years old. Now, growing up so fast. Becoming someone strong and kind and clear-sighted despite everything she'd been through. Or maybe because of it. Gerald had minimal involvement in their lives. He showed up for his supervised visits, but they were awkward and surface level. He didn't know how to talk to Sophie anymore. Maybe he never really had. After 6 months of supervised visits, his lawyer petitioned for unsupervised time. James opposed it, arguing that Gerald hadn't demonstrated consistent commitment. The court ordered another evaluation. The evaluator's report was damning. Mr. Morrison shows little understanding of his daughter's interests, educational activities, or emotional needs. During observed visitations, he spends most of the time on his phone while Sophie plays alone. He has not attended any school events, parent-teacher conferences, or medical appointments. His commitment to parenting appears performative rather than genuine. The judge denied the petition for unsupervised visits. Gerald would remain on supervised visitation for another 6 months before being re-evaluated. Simone had disappeared from the picture. Natasha heard through mutual acquaintances that she and Gerald had broken up shortly after the divorce was finalized. Apparently, dating a married man was more exciting than dealing with a divorced man with serious child support obligations and a damaged reputation. Monique paid her monthly settlement installments on time. She never contacted Natasha directly. Natasha heard through her father, they still spoke occasionally carefully, that Monique had moved to another state, found work in a different field, and was in therapy working through her jealousy issues. Brittany stayed with their parents part-time while Monique got her life together. Natasha felt sad for her niece, but there was nothing she could do. She had to focus on her own daughter's welfare. One Saturday in September, Natasha was working at the foundation office, reviewing grant applications. They were growing fast enough to need more funding. She had become adept at writing proposals, building donor relationships, networking with other nonprofits. Someone knocked on her office door. She looked up to see a man in his late 30s, tall with kind eyes and an uncertain smile. "Hi, I'm sorry to interrupt. I'm Bennett Crawford. I volunteer at the literacy program next door. I heard about your work and wondered if you might want to collaborate on some programming." Natasha gestured for him to sit. "What kind of collaboration?" Bennett explained he was a 5th-grade teacher who ran a volunteer literacy tutoring program for struggling readers. He'd heard about the foundation's work with children facing family pressure and thought there might be overlap. "A lot of my students struggle because of pressure at home," he said. "Parents who get angry about reading levels, who punish kids for not being at grade level. I think our programs could complement each other." They talked for over an hour about children, education, family dynamics. Bennett was thoughtful and passionate about his work. He told stories about his students with genuine affection and zero ego. As he was leaving, he paused. "I know this is forward, but would you want to grab coffee sometime? To keep discussing the collaboration, I mean." Natasha smiled. "I'd like that." Their coffee meeting the following week extended into dinner. They discovered they had similar philosophies about education, similar experiences with dysfunctional family dynamics, similar hopes for making systems better for children. "I got divorced 3 years ago," Bennett admitted over pasta. "My ex-wife wanted a lifestyle I couldn't provide on a teacher's salary. She wanted me to quit and go into corporate training. When I said no, she said I was selfish and unambitious. You're neither of those things. You're dedicated to work that matters. That's what I thought. But it took me a while to believe it after she left. They talked about healing from betrayal, about rebuilding, about finding purpose after loss. It felt easy, comfortable. Natasha realized she was enjoying herself for the first time in months without thinking about lawsuits or divorce or family drama. When Bennett drove her home that night, he walked her to the door like a gentleman from another era. "I'd like to see you again," he said. "Not just for foundation business. Actually see you. I'd like that too. But I should tell you I have a daughter. She's my priority. Always. As she should be. I wouldn't respect you if it was any other way." They started dating slowly. Coffee dates. Lunches. Eventually dinners where Bennett made her laugh with terrible jokes and thoughtful observations. He met Sophie for the first time at a foundation event, where he helped kids with spelling practice. Sophie's verdict after meeting him: "He's nice. He talks to me like I'm a real person, not just a kid. And he knows a lot about books." High praise from an 8-year-old. Natasha didn't rush anything. She had learned that slow and steady built something real. Bennett was patient, understanding when she needed space, showing up consistently without pressure. 3 months into dating, he came to watch Sophie compete in a spelling bee. Natasha was nervous about it. The last man who had been at one of Sophie's competitions was Gerald, who hadn't shown up. But Bennett was there early, saving them good seats, cheering when Sophie advanced through rounds. When she won 3rd place, he congratulated her like it was the Olympics. "That was amazing," he told Sophie afterward. "The way you sounded out that last word? That took real skill." Sophie beamed. "Thanks, Mr. Bennett. Did you see Mommy recording it?" "I did. She's very proud of you." "Are you proud of me too?" Bennett knelt down to Sophie's level. "I'm proud of you for doing your best and enjoying it. That's what matters." On the drive home, Sophie asked from the back seat, "Mommy, do you think Mr. Bennett might stick around?" Natasha met her daughter's eyes in the rearview mirror. "I don't know, baby." "Why?" "Because I like him. He's not like Daddy. He actually pays attention." "He does pay attention. To both of us." "Good. We deserve someone who pays attention." Natasha smiled. Yes, they did. The foundation continued to grow. By the end of its first year, they had helped over 100 families, received 2 major grants, and were being recognized nationally for their innovative approach to educational advocacy. Natasha was invited to speak at conferences, to write articles, to consult with school districts developing anti-pressure policies. Her story, from assault victim to nonprofit founder, resonated with people. But the best part wasn't the recognition or the growth. It was the families who came back to thank her. The children who were thriving because someone finally protected them from unhealthy pressure. The parents who learned to support without controlling. One mother sent a card that Natasha kept on her desk. "You saved my daughter." Not just from her father's anger about her grades. You saved her belief that she could be smart and still be loved. Thank you for turning your pain into purpose. Natasha read that card on hard days, when grant applications were rejected or when a case didn't go the way she hoped. It reminded her why she did this work. Sophie was proud of her mother's work too. She told her friends about the foundation, brought in guest speakers to her class, volunteered at foundation events. "My mom helps kids like me," Sophie told her class during a presentation. "Kids whose families get too weird about winning. She shows them that being smart is good but being kind is better. And that nobody gets to hurt you for being excellent." 8 years old and already understanding what it had taken Natasha 33 years to learn. One evening, after a particularly successful foundation fundraiser, Natasha sat on her porch watching the sunset. Sophie was inside video chatting with friends. Bennett was teaching a night class but would call later. Her phone buzzed. A text from her father: "Your mother and I saw the article about the foundation in the newspaper. We're proud of what you've built. We were wrong about how we handled things. We hope someday you can forgive us." Natasha read the message 3 times. Part of her wanted to ignore it, to hold on to the anger and hurt. But another part, the part that had learned that peace was better than vengeance, knew that forgiveness didn't mean forgetting. It just meant letting go of the weight. She typed back, "Thank you. I'm not ready to rebuild our relationship yet, but I appreciate you saying this." It was honest. It was enough. She looked out at the street where Sophie used to ride her bike, where the SpellingBee trophy incident had ended, where her old life had shattered. That life was gone. In its place was something better. Something built on truth instead of compromise. On strength instead of accommodation. On purpose instead of peacekeeping. Natasha had learned the most important lesson. The best revenge wasn't destruction. It was construction. Building a life so good that the people who hurt you became irrelevant. She had won more than court cases. She had won herself back. The first anniversary of the Educational Advocacy Foundation for Children was celebrated with a small ceremony at the office. Current clients, former clients, volunteers, and donors filled the space that had grown from one room to a full suite. Sophie cut the ribbon on a new conference room named in her honor, the Sophie Morrison Children's Advocacy Center. It was painted in her favorite color, purple, and filled with comfortable chairs, books, and games where children could meet with counselors in a safe, welcoming environment. "I can't believe this whole place exists because of what happened to me," Sophie said quietly to Natasha during the ceremony. "It exists because of what you survived. And because you were brave enough to testify, to tell the truth, to keep being yourself even when it would have been easier to shrink. Do you think any of this would have happened if Aunt Monique hadn't hit me?" Natasha thought about this carefully. "I don't know. Maybe eventually I would have stood up for myself. But you're right, what happened forced me to see clearly. Sometimes we need a crisis to show us what we're capable of. I'm glad something good came from it. It would be sad if it was just bad forever." The foundation now employed 6 people. Dr. Hayes the therapist, 2 family advocates, an education specialist, a lawyer who worked on retainer, and an administrative coordinator. They had helped over 200 families in the first year, facilitated 30 custody evaluations, and prevented documented cases of educational abuse in 12 families. The model was being replicated in other cities. Natasha had been consulting with groups in Chicago, Seattle, and Atlanta who wanted to start similar organizations. "You're becoming famous," Bennett teased her one evening over dinner at his apartment. He had cooked, not well but with enthusiasm, and they were attempting to eat his overly ambitious attempt at Thai food. "Not famous, just visible. Is that okay? Being visible after spending so long trying to keep the peace and stay in the background?" Natasha considered this. "It's terrifying and exhilarating at the same time. I spent my whole life trying not to make waves. Now I'm making waves professionally. It's strange. It suits you. You're good at it." They had been dating for 8 months now. It was still slow, still careful, but deepening. Bennett had met Natasha's few remaining friends, had come to family events at the foundation, had become a regular presence at Sunday breakfast with Sophie. He was kind. He was steady. He was genuinely interested in Natasha's work and Sophie's life. He asked questions and listened to answers. He showed up when he said he would. He was, in every way, the opposite of Gerald. "I need to tell you something," Bennett said, setting down his fork. "I'm falling for you. For both of you. And I need to know if this is going anywhere because I don't want to invest my heart if you're not ready." Natasha's breath caught. She had been avoiding this conversation, avoiding defining what they were doing, because she was terrified of trusting someone again. "I'm scared," she admitted. "My last relationship ended with lies and betrayal and years of my life wasted. I don't know if I'm ready to risk that again. I understand scared. But I'm not Gerald. I've never lied to you. I've been honest about my divorce, my finances, my intentions. I'm not asking you to marry me tomorrow. I'm just asking if you see a future here." Did she? Natasha thought about the months they'd spent together. The easy conversations. The laughter. The way Bennett treated Sophie with genuine affection and respect. The way he supported Natasha's work without trying to control it. The way he had his own life, his own purpose, but made space for theirs too. "I see a future," she said quietly. "I'm just afraid of it. What if we're afraid together? What if we just take it one day at a time and see where it goes? I can do one day at a time." Bennett smiled. "Then that's what we'll do." They held hands across the table, both of them aware this was a turning point. Not a commitment to forever, but a commitment to possibility. That spring, Sophie competed in the state spelling bee finals again. This time, Natasha sat in the audience with Bennett on one side and Sophie's friend's mother on the other. No family drama. No pressure. Just support. Sophie made it to the final round before missing perspicacious. She came in second place, winning a scholarship and a trophy. Unlike last time, there was no violence in the parking lot. Just congratulations and ice cream with friends. "Are you disappointed?" Natasha asked her daughter later. "No. I did my best. And perspicacious is a really hard word. The kid who won deserved it. I'm proud of you." "I know, Mommy. I'm proud of me too. 9 years old now. Confident. Resilient. Happy." Natasha thought about the 7-year-old who had been slapped in a parking lot, who had testified in court, who had watched her family implode. That child had grown into someone remarkable. The foundation's second-year expansion included partnerships with 3 school districts to implement anti-pressure policies. They developed curriculum for teachers about recognizing signs of unhealthy family pressure. They trained school counselors on advocacy strategies. Natasha was asked to testify before the state legislature about proposed laws requiring schools to screen for educational abuse. She prepared carefully, bringing Sophie with her. "Why do I need to come?" Sophie asked. "Because you're the reason these laws are being considered. Your story matters." At the Capitol, Natasha spoke for 15 minutes about the foundation's work, about the families they'd helped, about the need for systemic change. Then Sophie spoke for 2 minutes. "My aunt hit me because I won a spelling bee," Sophie said into the microphone, her voice clear and strong. "She hit me because she thought her daughter deserved to win more than I did. That's not okay. And if there had been a program at my school to help families with this kind of pressure, maybe it wouldn't have happened. Or maybe it would have been caught earlier. Either way, kids need protection. Not just from strangers but from family members who put winning ahead of their welfare." The committee room was silent when she finished. Several legislators had tears in their eyes. The bill passed unanimously 2 months later. Sophie Morrison's law required all public schools in the state to implement screening protocols for educational abuse and provide resources to families identified as at risk. "There's a law named after me," Sophie said in wonder when Natasha told her the news. "That's so cool. You changed things, baby. Your pain became purpose. Just like you, Mommy." Gerald had faded to the edges of their lives. He still had supervised visits, but he missed them frequently with work excuses. When he did show up, his conversations with Sophie were stilted and superficial. "Dad asked me if I still do spelling bees," Sophie mentioned after one visit. "I've been telling him about them for months, but he doesn't remember. It's like he doesn't really listen." "I'm sorry, baby. It's okay. I have Mr. Bennett now. He remembers everything." Bennett had become Uncle Bennett to Sophie at her insistence. He came to her school events, helped with homework, taught her to play chess. He was building a relationship with her separate from his relationship with Natasha, which Natasha appreciated. "If this doesn't work out between us," Natasha told Bennett one evening, "you'll break her heart. Then I better make sure it works out." By the foundation's second anniversary, Natasha had been featured in 3 national publications, spoken at a dozen conferences, and consulted with organizations in 8 states. The foundation was sustainable now, with steady funding from grants and donors. She had also started writing a book about her experience. The working title was When Family Hurts: Protecting Children from the People Who Should Love Them Most. "Tell me if this is too much," she read to Bennett from her draft. "Tell me if it sounds preachy or victimized or anything other than helpful. Read it to me." She read him the introduction, her voice shaking slightly. "My sister slapped my daughter across the face in a parking lot because my child won a spelling bee. That moment shattered my family but saved my life. It forced me to see patterns I had ignored, to confront truths I had avoided, and to choose my child's welfare over family peace. This is the story of that choice and everything that followed." Bennett was quiet when she finished. "Then, it's perfect. It's honest without being bitter. Strong without being harsh. You're giving people permission to protect their children even when it costs them their families. Do you think anyone will read it? I think thousands of people will read it and feel less alone." The book proposal was picked up by a publisher 3 months later. The advance was modest, but the opportunity to reach more people was invaluable. Natasha worked on the manuscript between foundation duties, pouring years of pain and learning onto the page. Sophie read parts of it and had feedback. "You should talk more about how scared you were. Not just about standing up to Aunt Monique, but about everything. People need to know it's okay to be scared and still do the right thing." 9 years old and already a better editor than most professionals. One Sunday morning, Natasha woke to find Bennett making breakfast in her kitchen while Sophie set the table. They were laughing about something easy and comfortable with each other. This was what healing looked like, Natasha realized. Not the absence of pain but the presence of joy. Not forgetting what happened but choosing to build something better. She stood in the doorway watching them, her daughter and this kind man who had appeared when she least expected it, and felt something she hadn't felt in years: hope for the future. Not just survival. Not just getting through. Actual hope for good things ahead. "Mommy?" Sophie called. Mr. Bennett made pancakes, but they're kind of weird shaped. "Come see." Natasha joined them at the table, looking at the pancakes that were indeed oddly shaped but smelled delicious. "I was going for circles," Bennett explained. "But they have personality instead." "They're perfect," Natasha said and meant it. They ate breakfast together, the three of them talking about Sophie's upcoming school project, Bennett's student who had just learned to read, the foundation's newest grant award. Normal things. Good things. Later, after Bennett left for a teacher conference and Sophie was upstairs reading, Natasha sat at her desk working on the book. She was writing the chapter about the divorce trial, about discovering the full extent of Gerald's deception. The betrayal taught me something crucial, she wrote. The people who hurt us often show us what they're capable of long before the final revelation. We just choose not to see it because seeing it would require action, would require change, would require us to stop being who we were and become who we needed to be. My ex-husband's lies weren't sudden. They were the continuation of years of emotional distance, neglect, and prioritizing himself over our family. I just didn't want to see it clearly until I had no choice. She read it back to herself. It was true. All of it. The signs had been there with Gerald, with Monique, with her parents enabling. She just hadn't been ready to see them. But she was ready now. Not just to see clearly but to help others see clearly too. The foundation, the book, the advocacy work, raising Sophie to be strong and kind, this was her purpose. Built from the ashes of everything that had burned down. And it was enough. More than enough. It was everything. The state spelling bee was held at a convention center downtown, much larger than the district competition where everything had started 2 years ago. Natasha sat in the audience between Bennett and Sophie's best friend's family, watching her daughter compete. Sophie was 10 now, taller and more confident than the 7-year-old who had been assaulted in a parking lot. She had been through therapy, had testified in court twice, had watched her family disintegrate and rebuild into something better. And she was still here, still competing, still loving words and language and the challenge of spelling. That was its own kind of triumph. The competition was intense. 43 spellers from across the state, all of them brilliant. Sophie made it through round after round, her face calm and focused as she approached the microphone each time. "May I have the definition, please?" she would ask, then the language of origin, then use it in a sentence. Her process was methodical, confident. In the final round, it came down to Sophie and a boy from San Francisco. The word they gave Sophie was resilience. She smiled slightly before beginning. Resilience. Resilience. "That is correct," the announcer called. If the boy missed his word, Sophie would win. Natasha held her breath. The boy was given entrepreneur. He spelled it correctly. They went 3 more rounds, both of them perfect. Finally, on round 19, Sophie was given acquiesce. She took her time. Acquiesce. 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 Correct. The boy approached the microphone for his word. Surveillance. He started strong, surveil. Then hesitated. NCE. The bell rang. Incorrect. Sophie won the state spelling bee. The auditorium erupted in applause. Sophie's face broke into a huge grin as she accepted the trophy. Natasha was crying, Bennett's arm around her shoulders, both of them cheering. This time, in the parking lot afterward, there was no violence. Just celebration. Sophie's friends swarmed her. Parents congratulated her. Someone from a local news station asked for an interview. "How does it feel to win?" the reporter asked Sophie. "Amazing. But also, it feels like I already won a long time ago." "What do you mean?" Sophie looked at Natasha. "I won when my mom decided to protect me instead of keeping peace with people who hurt me. Everything else after that is just bonus." The reporter turned to Natasha. "You're the founder of the Educational Advocacy Foundation, correct? The organization that helps children facing family pressure." "I am. Your story has become well known. How does it feel to be here 2 years after the incident that started all this?" Natasha looked at her daughter holding her trophy, at Bennett standing proud beside them, at the life they had built from ruins. "It feels like justice," she said simply. "Not the revenge kind. The healing kind." Among the crowd, Natasha noticed 2 familiar figures standing at the back. Her parents. They had come. After the reporters dispersed, her father approached cautiously. Her mother stood back, uncertain. "You were wonderful, Sophie," her father said. "Congratulations." "Thanks, Grandpa." Her mother stepped forward then. "Natasha, we'd like to talk sometime. If you're willing. We've been wrong about a lot of things. We'd like to try to make it right." Natasha studied her mother's face. She looked older, tired, but also sincere. "I can't promise we'll go back to how things were," Natasha said carefully. "We don't want to go back," her father said. "We want to go forward. If you'll let us." Sophie looked up at Natasha. "Can they come to my celebration dinner?" Natasha smiled at her daughter, then at her parents. Yes, they can come. It wouldn't fix everything. 2 years of silence and hurt didn't heal in one dinner. But it was a start. A foundation to build on if they all chose to. The celebration dinner was at Sophie's favorite restaurant. A big group including Sophie's friends, Bennett, Natasha's parents, and several families from the foundation. It was loud and chaotic and joyful. Natasha's mother sat next to her at one point. Your foundation has helped so many people. We read about it. All the families you've supported. That's the goal. Monique is doing better. She's in therapy, working steadily. She asked about you. About Sophie. Natasha's hand tightened on her water glass. What about her? She wanted me to tell you she's sorry. Really sorry. She knows she can't undo what she did, but she's trying to be better. I hope she succeeds. For Brittany's sake. Could you ever forgive her? Natasha thought about this. I've forgiven her for my own peace. That doesn't mean I trust her or want her in our lives. Forgiveness and reconciliation aren't the same thing. Her mother nodded slowly. You've become very wise. I've become very clear about what matters. There's a difference. The evening ended with Sophie standing on her chair to make a toast with her apple juice. I want to thank everyone who came to cheer for me today. And I want to thank my mom who taught me that being excellent is good, but being kind is better. And that standing up for yourself isn't mean, it's necessary. I love you all. Everyone clinked glasses and Natasha felt tears well up again. Her daughter. Her brave, brilliant, resilient daughter who had taken the worst thing that happened to her and used it as fuel to become someone extraordinary. Later that night, after everyone had left and Sophie was asleep with her trophy on her nightstand, Natasha sat on the porch with Bennett. This was a good day, Bennett said. It was a perfect day. I need to tell you something. Bennett turned to face her. I love you. I've loved you for months now, but I wanted to wait for the right time. This feels like the right time. You don't have to say it back. I just needed you to know. Natasha's heart expanded in her chest. She had been protecting herself, holding back, afraid to fully invest in this relationship. But Bennett had been patient, steady, showing up day after day with kindness and consistency. I love you too, she said. I've been afraid to say it. Afraid to jinx it or trust it or believe it was real. But it is real, isn't it? It's real. They sat in comfortable silence, holding hands, watching the street where Natasha's old life had ended and her new one had begun. The book was published 6 months later. When Family Hurts, Protecting Children from the People Who Should Love Them Most became a bestseller in the parenting category. Natasha did a book tour, speaking at libraries and bookstores and parent organizations across the country. The foundation expanded to 4 cities. The model worked. Protecting children from family pressure, providing resources and advocacy, teaching parents healthier ways to support achievement without creating toxicity. Gerald remained mostly absent. He had moved to another state for work, saw Sophie 3 times a year for supervised visits, paid his child support on time but nothing more. Sophie had long since stopped expecting more from him. It's sad, she told Natasha one day, that he doesn't want to know me. But it's also okay. I have enough people who do want to know me. Monique sent a letter on the 3rd anniversary of the assault. Natasha read it once, then filed it away. The letter was apologetic, explaining Monique's therapy journey, her understanding now of what she'd done and why. It asked for nothing but wanted Natasha to know she was truly sorry. Natasha didn't respond to the letter. Maybe someday she would. Maybe not. She had learned that some relationships ended and that was okay. That you could wish someone well and still not want them in your life. Bennett proposed on a random Tuesday evening while they were making dinner together. No grand gesture, no elaborate plan. Just him, Natasha, and the truth between them. Marry me, he said simply. Not because you need me but because we're better together than apart. Marry me because we've built something real and I want to keep building it for the rest of our lives. Yes, Natasha said, tears streaming down her face. Yes. They told Sophie together. She jumped up and down screaming with excitement. Does this mean Mr. Bennett will live here? And I get to be a flower girl? And we'll be a real family? We're already a real family, Bennett said. This just makes it official. The wedding was small, held in the foundation's garden space. Sophie was the maid of honor. Natasha's parents attended, walking a careful line of being present without overstepping. Some college friends Natasha had reconnected with came. Bennett's family filled several rows, warm and welcoming. Natasha wore a simple cream dress and carried wildflowers. Bennett cried when he saw her. Sophie cried too. Everyone cried. I used to think love meant keeping the peace, Natasha said in her vows. That being a good partner meant accommodating and compromising and smoothing over problems. But you taught me that real love is honest. It's standing beside someone in their truth. It's being brave enough to be fully yourself and trust that you'll be loved anyway. Thank you for showing me what real love looks like. Bennett's vows were equally emotional. You're the strongest person I know. Not because you never break, but because you always rebuild better than before. Thank you for letting me be part of your rebuilding. Thank you for trusting me with your heart and with Sophie's. I promise to honor both for the rest of my life. The reception was full of dancing and laughter. Sophie gave a toast that made everyone cry again. My mom taught me that the best revenge is a life well lived. Today, looking around at all the people who love us, at the foundation she built, at the families we've helped, at Mr. Bennett who makes her smile every day, I think she was right. This is the best revenge. Being happy, being safe, being loved. Thank you all for being part of our new family. 4 years after the SpellingBee assault, Natasha stood at a podium accepting an award for the foundation's work. The National Child Advocacy Award recognized organizations that had made significant impact in protecting children's welfare. I started this foundation because my daughter was hurt, Natasha told the audience. Because my sister's jealousy turned violent and my family chose to protect the wrong person. But what I learned through that pain was that family isn't just about blood. It's about who shows up, who protects you, who celebrates your successes without resentment, who stands by you when standing by you is difficult. The real family I have now includes my daughter, my husband, the colleagues who work tirelessly at the foundation, the families we serve, and all of you who support this work. Together, we're proving that the best response to being hurt isn't hurting back. It's building something so beautiful that the people who hurt you become irrelevant. 4 years ago, I was broken. My daughter was traumatized. Our family had fractured. Today, we're whole. Not despite what happened, but because of what we chose to do with what happened. We chose purpose over bitterness, construction over destruction, love over revenge. That's the message I want to leave you with tonight. Your pain can become your purpose. Your trauma can transform into triumph. And the best revenge isn't destruction. It's building a life so good that the people who hurt you don't matter anymore. The standing ovation lasted 3 minutes. Natasha stood there thinking about 7-year-old Sophie getting slapped in a parking lot, about the lawsuits and divorce and family estrangement that followed, about every difficult decision and painful choice. And she thought about what came after. The foundation the families helped, the book that reached thousands, the state law protecting children, Bennett's love, Sophie's resilience, the life they had built. The best revenge was indeed a life well lived. Backstage after the ceremony, Sophie hugged her mother. I'm so proud of you, Mommy. I'm proud of you, baby. You've grown into an amazing person. We both have. Together. Bennett appeared with champagne for Natasha and sparkling cider for Sophie. To the Morrison Crawford family, he toasted. May we continue building beautiful things from broken pieces. They clinked glasses, the three of them, and Natasha felt a completeness she had never experienced before. Not the false completeness of pretending everything was fine. The real kind that came from honest healing. That night, lying in bed next to Bennett, Natasha thought about the journey. From betrayed wife and victim of family violence to nonprofit founder, published author, advocate, and voice for children who needed protection. The woman she had become was forged in fire. But she was also built in love. The real kind, the honest kind, the kind that demanded you be yourself and promised to stay anyway. What are you thinking about? Bennett asked, pulling her closer. How far we've come. How different life is now from 4 years ago. Better? So much better. I didn't know life could be this good. This honest. This real. It can be. It is. And it's only going to get better. Sophie appeared in the doorway, holding her stuffed elephant. Can I sleep in here tonight? I had a bad dream. Of course, baby. Come here. Sophie climbed between them, settling in like she belonged there. Which she did. This was her family. Real family. Chosen family. The family that protected her, celebrated her, loved her without conditions or comparisons. I love you both, Sophie said sleepily. We love you too, Natasha and Bennett said together. Lying there with her daughter and husband, Natasha felt peace. The kind that came from knowing she had done the hard work of becoming herself. Of protecting what mattered. Of building something meaningful from pain. 4 years ago, her sister had slapped her daughter in a parking lot. That violence had broken everything familiar. But from those broken pieces, Natasha had built a life of purpose, a family of love, and a legacy of helping others do the same. The best revenge wasn't burning down the people who hurt you. It was standing tall in the life you built without them. And Natasha was standing very tall indeed.